So we've looked at the Auradin from a theory perspective, and it's kind of negative because on paper it compares less compared to the other builds. In practice though, in testing, it actually feels really good and is one of the premier builds that you're going to be looking at when you're considering Holy Shock Aura, or Holy Shock character with the Paladin. This variant, we're running the Dragon and the Hand of Justice combined with the Dream. This is just because we're thinking of the fire aura will be increased in 2.4, so this is what we're testing. The cool thing here is because you're using conviction on yourself, one, it makes it a lot more fluid as you're moving around. Conviction seems to apply a lot more readily. And then you also have the benefit of not needing Enigma, which it definitely makes for a slower clear, I will say that much, than a lot of other builds, but was enjoyable to play. The cool thing as well, because you have a higher level of conviction than you would with an infinity, is you tend to break more resistances. So those high resistance monsters, you'll even break some resistances that you didn't think you could and are able to slay more monsters. So it's a more multifaceted build than I even thought it was in the first place. Now, something about this build, however, is that because you need to hit certain attack speed breakpoints, it means you cannot really fit in, because we're using the Dream as well, either the Drax or the Exile for that life tap, which would help out significantly for this build because you have so much less physical damage that your leech is going to be very low. It makes it a little bit harder to survive. So that was the biggest complaint I had when I was going through testing, is I had a harder time just surviving. I would get into situations where I might have amp damage on my character, which of course makes it insanely hard to survive. And then you get grouped up, you get mobbed, and you get surrounded. And this creates a situation where, because you don't have Enigma, you can't teleport out, so it gets very frustrating from that sense. The Doom on the offensive merc did work out fairly well in the sense that I was able to slow enemies. It was the benefit of both the physical and the cold was kind of nice. It's a weaker setup than some other setups. Now, what I did really enjoy was the Dream Zealot. So this is like kind of your more standard Dream Holy Shock build, where it's a similar character build where we're just investing in conviction here, but because you don't have to put points into resist fire to get the synergy for your holy fire items, you can put the rest of the points into zeal and sacrifice, which means it's a more physical focused variant. And because we're focusing more on just two-faceted rather than three-faceted elements, it turns out to be a much smoother experience. You have higher physical damage, you have better leech, which in turn leads to higher survivability. You're able to fit in the Enigma for teleport, so in those bad situations, you're able to teleport out. And even if your cast rate is not very high, and even on swap is still fairly low, it still is more utility. You can get around, you can get to Baal quicker, so Baal running or boss running will be a little bit smoother. Having the grief in general was just a better setup too. So quite enjoyed this build. It was one of the best performers, just behind the Holy Shock Auradin, or Holy Shock Zealot rather, just behind the Holy Shock Zealot in performance. And the only reason I put it just behind is because the Holy Shock Zealot can still fit in those extra life tap items, whereas this character, even though you get a little bit more flexibility in terms of having the conviction aura on your own character, it still had a little bit of an issue there. Now, one of the cool things with this character, because we do have conviction ourselves, our mercenary doesn't have to run infinity. So you can either run a pride, or in this case, I opted for a Reaper's Toll because I still want our mercenary to do a lot of damage themselves. So the catch here is that the Reaper's Toll is going to allow us to get past some physical immunes, and we'll see Decrepify here. It actually gives slows enemies down, slows their attack speed, and gives us increased enhanced damage against them and reduces their damage output, which is hugely beneficial against those boss targets, but also can be nice against like uniques that are a little bit hard to kill. And as you can see here, the DPS just goes much higher when your mercenary is focusing down the targets that you are. So we're going to focus on giving our mercenary treachery and IAS jewel to just increase their breakpoint, but we also want crushing blow on our mercenary too. So I give him bear rune in the weapon combined with the G-face, just gets you that nice level of crushing blow because our character does not have that high of crushing blow. This will allow you to kill bosses a little bit easier. Still went with the War Travelers, even though a good alternate option here for the boot slot. Gore Riders would give extra crushing blow, deadly strike. Those are better physically, but I think a more well-rounded build includes the War Travelers here. We give the average damage, the extra magic find. You can see our magic find with this build is still rather good. So I would actually be able to run this build consistently and still find items with it, which is a huge draw in my opinion. So that's that. In terms of the third place, I know I was really looking forward to the Holy Shock Dragon variant, where we put plus skills and we use the Holy Shock, and then you wear the dragon pieces and the Hand of Justice. I was really looking forward to this performing. However, I couldn't find a good variant. I tried running the Drax gloves to give life tap, but the problem is that Hand of Justice blinds targets, and the blind on hit applies a debuff, which can override your life tap. So this setup was awkward. The fact that you didn't have Enigma, it's supposed to be Dragon by the way, the fact that you don't have Enigma means that your DPS is one of the highest and probably will be really high come 2.4, but utility of this build is really low. Even if you drop your Call to Arms and Spirit on swap for like a teleport staff, it's just the usability is very hard because your mercenary has infinity and they like to wander off, so you don't always have the infinity debuff. So even though you technically have the highest burst of the 3 characters here, or 4 characters, you just don't realize that all the time, and yeah. Ends up being a weaker setup overall, even though it has the highest damage potential. So this is one I'll keep my eye on. I'll still test. I'll play around with it a little bit more, but at the current time, it's not performing as well as I thought it would. So anyway, just thought you'd like to know. And I'm very happy, especially with the Grief Exile variant. So the standard Holy Shock in where you run Infinity on the Mercenary and you use the Aura yourself was especially enjoyable with the Exile. Conversely, I enjoyed the 4 facet for the cold and the Exile for the fire. I'll keep an eye on those because those are high potentials. And then the Dream Zealot, the surprise. I didn't think I would like any type of Auradin build, but this has proved wrong. It's not as heavy on the auras because I opted for the Reaper's Toll, but it actually works out better in my opinion. Still went for the Hylo's Wrath here. You could technically go Atma's, but Atma's has a very low proc chance, and I just feel like the attack speed in this slot fits the build a little bit better. So I'll stick with that for now. And yeah, I want to thank you for tuning in. Have a good day.